When the user touches a city name to select that city and display its corresponding forecast, the selectForecast method is going to be called with the name of the city as an argument, and we will then assign that to the last selected city and immediately look up the zip code for that city. And if for any reason the zip code string comes back as null, we'll simply return immediately from the selectForecast method. Otherwise, we'll go down to lines 259 and 260 and attempt to get a reference to the forecast fragment that's currently displayed on the right side of the screen. Now, the very first time that selectForecast gets called in the app, this statement is going to result in current forecast fragment having the value null, because as the app is first loaded, there won't be a forecast fragment displayed right away. And in that case, we need to create a forecast fragment and display it on the screen. For all subsequent calls to selectForecast, this statement that you see on the screen highlighted is going to result in a reference to either a single forecast fragment or a 5-day forecast fragment, both of which are subtypes of forecast fragment, which is what we're casting the result of this expression to once it executes. Now remember, our activity has several fragments within it, and the getFragmentManager method of the activity class is going to give us back a fragment manager object that we can use to do things like look up fragments that are on the screen housed within the activity at the moment, and also the ability to do things like transition from one fragment to another, both of which we want to do in this method. So getFragmentManager gives us the fragment manager. FindFragment by ID, r.id.forecast replacer is going to give back the forecast fragment with that ID. If there is one, we will get back an actual reference. If there's not one, then we'll get back null as a result of that. Now, at line 262 through 264, if current forecast fragment is null, or if the zip code of that fragment that's not null is not equal to the zip code string that we're looking up, in that case we want to be creating an appropriate forecast fragment. If it is the same zip code, we don't want to replace what's already on the screen because we already have the forecast for what's on the screen. And then separately, the AND correct tab current forecast fragment, this is just checking to make sure that the tab that's displayed is correct for whatever type of forecast fragment is currently displayed on the screen. Now, once we're inside of this if statement, we check the current tab value to see if it's the current conditions tab. If it is, we're going to create a single forecast fragment, which gives you the current conditions, by calling its static method new instance with the appropriate zip code string. Otherwise, we must be on the 5-day forecast tab, and therefore we'll call 5-day forecast fragment dot new instance, again a static method of that class, with the appropriate zip code string. And this creates the fragment that we now want to display on the screen. And in order to swap fragments, we need to do a fragment transaction. So here at line 281 and 282, we create a fragment transaction called forecast fragment transaction. We use the fragment manager to begin the transaction. We then set up a transition, which is going to allow us to basically do a little bit of an animation between the fragments in this case. The type of transition that we're doing is a fade, which means that one of the fragments will fade out and the other one will fade in. And then at line 290 and 291, we say that we would like to replace whatever fragment has the ID forecast replacer with the current forecast fragment that we just created. So it's going to now go and replace whatever object on the screen has that ID with the new fragment. And as soon as you call the transactions commit method, it begins the transition from one fragment to the next.